Thank you so much for joining us. In honor of Women's History Month, Acker is thrilled to present our Women in Wine series, available to stream on our Instagram, Acker YouTube channels. So please subscribe to experience all of our incredible content. We have an amazing roster lined up of some wonderful women who are invigorating the wine industry. My name is Lily Mirabelle Friedman, and I'm honored to be joined today by Rebekah Wineburg, winemaker of California's Quintessa. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rebekah. Where are you joining us from?
I am joining you from the Quintessa Vineyard, actually. Behind me is one of our oldest blocks on the property.
Looks like a beautiful day where you are. How's 2021 shaping up in the Napa Valley?
2021 is shaping up pretty well. It's been another dry and warmer winter. So we're at the finish right now of pruning. And so we're taking that into account and adjusting our activities with the idea in mind that this might be another dry year.
Have you done anything, you've been there now for a few years, have you done anything kind of global warming related to kind of combat the series of dry years we've had now?
Yes, we're in a climate here where we never get rain during the summer. And so we have vines and a terroir that has really ample energy, ample water at the beginning of the season. And then we know at the end of the season, it's going to be dry. And so over the last couple of years, we've come to this understanding and this belief that the resilience of the vines, what we can do with our techniques to build resilience in the vines and to have them set up for that end of season conditions. So we've adjusted the pruning. We work in a biodynamic framework here. So we are working with our composting, all of this idea of kind of training these vines to build their resilience. And I think that is what's gonna carry us through the global warming.
Perfect. Well, let's start from the beginning. And so much of our past dictates our future. So let's start there. What was your dream child as a career?
Well, when I was a science geeky kid, so always have been into science and understanding how things work. So I think like every other little girl, I wanted to be a marine biologist. So yeah, swim with the dolphins, study the animals. And so that's what I used to think I would be before I discovered wine.
From reading your bio, you've seemingly had a very hyper-focused career in the wine world, going to UC Davis, interning at Ornellaia, and then launching a career at wineries throughout the Napa Valley. But you have an incredibly strong background in science. Why did you initially go into the wine industry?
Well, I actually got the idea of being a winemaker, that this was something that one could actually do when I was 16 years old, visiting Napa Valley on a day trip with my family. So up until that point, I thought I'd be a research biologist. And at that moment, I realized that I could have a product. I could work with science, but also with the land and the seasons. And I got that idea. So I didn't know how to make that happen. I grew up on the East Coast with no wine connections, no farming backgrounds, nothing like that. So I did study chemistry and biology as an undergrad. And then found my way into an internship in California after graduation and UC Davis. And then you're very right. In retrospect, looking from where I am right now, looking back, my path seems hyper-focused, really strategic. I would love to say that that was all on purpose. But I think, in any life, there's a lot of like coincidences that line up and you get these moments that just happen.
Was there a pivotal wine that you tasted that made you want to go into wine, or was it really that kind of first experience in the Napa Valley?
So I was 16. I was allowed to drink at home, but I didn't come from a wine collecting family. So I liked wine. And of course, the first wine I really ever liked was a sweet Vouvray, right? But no, at first, at 16, what really interested me was the way that grapes are transformed through fermentation, that we have this product, these great products that are grapes that represent the year, that are grown. And then through fermentation, through aging, through the winemaking process, they are transformed to something completely different and something stable and that you can share with the world. And so that was what first got me into it. Now, it was when I was at UC Davis, I did actually have like a wine moment that changed my life, but I was actually already in the wine business at that time. And this was a tasting of 1998 Ornellaia. It was the first wine that I ever had that had a soul, that really clearly said something, spoke of a place. And it made me go back to school like that. I was at UC Davis, enroll in Italian class. And that wine changed my life. And I had no idea what the wine was when I was tasting it. None at
Did
all.
you consider staying in Italy and making wine there, or you wanted to come back to America?
Well, I would have loved to do that. It was very hard as an American to make that happen. And so I didn't have I always dreamed about moving back to Italy, but it never, maybe I'll still be there, right? But it never quite worked out in the time. And then I've settled in Napa Valley and I just love this place so much.
Of course. Well, I think Italian wine and California wine, especially these days, have a lot in common, and there's certainly certain threads that connect the two. So it's great to hear that story. What have been your greatest challenges in building your career?
Oh, that's a good question. My greatest challenges, I think, in building my career have been in as a winemaker, you've finished school, but you're not ready to be a winemaker yet. Like you have the baseline, and then you have to work through a series of internships, of stages and harvests to gain that experience. And so I think the biggest challenge for me throughout my career has been in figuring out what the next thing I need to learn is, what that next place is. And then when you finally feel ready, having to find or looking to find that place that is going to be your home. Being a winemaker and being responsible for an estate, it's like a marriage. And so you do, like, it really is, you really have to feel something for the land and feel connected to it through thick and thin, good times and bad, and be able to have its personality and your personality mesh. And I think, that is a challenge, to find that spot that you feel at home in.
Did you, in making those kind of different pivots and finding those next steps, did you ever have a mentor that helped you with that?
I do. Yeah, I'm very lucky to call Celia Welch my mentor. Celia and I met when she was consulting at a winery I used to work at called Buccella, and she is so wonderful. You know her wines, but also how she is as a person and her generosity of spirit, and it's just so wonderful to have someone that you're friends with, that you can ask all those questions to. I think that's what being a mentor is about, is being someone that your mentee can reach out to you and ask any of those questions that they want to have, or get advice on life and jobs and difficult situations.
Have you begun to mentor anyone yourself?
I have, actually, yeah. And that's a funny thing to see myself on the other side of that. So I have a few people that I've mentored through that were my interns and I've stayed in contact with. And then this year, actually, I'm part of a more formal organization, mentorship organization called Bâtonnage Forum. That is focusing on mentoring women and people of color in the industry. And so I have 25 mentees in that program. And it's been so cool to meet them and to see where they are in their stage of career and in their life, and to get to know a whole new set of people that I wouldn't have just casually, brushed by. Like, so we've made these connections. It's really been one of the nicest things about this past year.
That's awesome, especially now that you're on the other side of the mentorship table, let's put it. Do you have a favorite trait about yourself?
So I think that, when I look at myself, uh, what I like about myself, or I guess, a trait, and that's helped me very much in my life, is the ability to see the levers, like to see what matters and what doesn't, to make that kind of decision about where you need to put your focus and where you don't have to put your focus. And I like connections. I like meeting people. I like helping people out. And so what I'm sharing with them, I've shared with them kind of my life story, how I've built my career, but also, I'm here for them to ask questions about what should they do next, because I think maybe I am a strategic thinker.
That would speak to your science background for sure. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm always interested to hear about how people approach risk. Do you generally consider yourself a risk taker?
Well, I'm a winemaker, so yes. I mean, we make the best laid plans. You have, everything that you would want to have control, right? As a human, we want to control things. And being a winemaker is being a farmer, and you don't have control. You can have an impact, you can have an influence, but you can't control stuff. So I think that being a winemaker is risk taking. And yeah, I like a challenge. So I would consider myself a bit of a risk taker.
Is there a specific instance that you can point to as the riskiest decision you've ever made professionally?
Oh, well, I think one of it worked out. One of the craziest things, though, I think I did was to leave a full-time job in California, in Napa. I was the assistant winemaker at Rudd, and to go to New Zealand to take a harvest gig because I wanted to have that, international experience. I wanted to go to New Zealand. I didn't have a job lined up for when I returned. Yeah, that was a little scary. All worked out in retrospect, but I was a little nervous. Yeah.
What did you take away from that experience other than that maybe risk isn't that bad?
Well, yeah, I think that you have to just jump in on things. I think that risk isn't that bad is a great lesson to learn. This is a side thing. I was a springboard diver as a kid. And I look back on that as a very, very important like a lesson learned while I was a diver, is that you are so scared all the time. You're so afraid of jumping off the board, and you're so worried about what's going to happen, how bad it can be. And then you do it, and the worst thing happens, like you smack or you hit, something bad happens, but it's not that bad. So I think that's a lesson I learned, and something that I take with me always, is take that risk, because what's the worst that could happen? If you've taken the risk, things have not gone well, and you survived, well, hey, that's great.
That's a great piece of advice. So in a year like this year, or 18 months, or however long it's been this year, how do you stay motivated?
Well, I am very lucky because I get to be out here and in the vineyard. And so because I get to watch the seasons and I get to watch the vines change, that has been how I remember what month it is, what is happening, and pass the time. And so that is how I'm keeping sane, is taking long walks outside. And I appreciate it every day that I get to do this.
Did you ever imagine that you'd be a farmer?
No.
No. You thought maybe more of like lab scientist, less farmer.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was thinking I would be a professor and I'd be doing, sabbaticals, studying something. No, it just never occurred to me. It wasn't something that was part of my circle or my life. And so I didn't even know that it was possible to be a farmer and to be so connected to the seasons. And I think it adds a real depth to my life. And I think that in the same way that wine adds, depth to other people's lives and to my life too, is that it's what connects us to a year. It's how we remember what happened in that year, by the vintage, and then when you taste older wines and wines that have aged, you can think back to what happened, what was going on when that wine was being made, when those grapes were growing in that season, and then think about everything that's happened in that time. And it's so much more than just a bottle of wine.
That's so well put. And I think that history component to the wine world is something that people who are so focused on pushing forward and perhaps innovating and the next thing, as culture certainly is today, that wine gives us this beautiful opportunity to open something, taste it, and taste history that I don't think any other product really necessarily offers.
Yeah, it's so connected to culture, and yeah, we've improved, or we've advanced in technology, we've advanced in understanding, but fundamentally, it's still the same.
Exactly.
Nothing has changed in 6,000 years.
Is there a defining moment that stands out when you look back at your personal story or professional story?
Well, you know, there's these little moments that stick in your head. And so I had the incredible opportunity to work at Ornellaia as a intern when I was just out of grad school. And that was my, first experience in real wine culture. Sitting together at lunch, having a bottle of wine, talking about wine at dinner. And one night I do remember having a bottle of wine that Thomas Duro, so he was the winemaker at the time, now he's back in Bordeaux. And we were tasting this wine and talking about it. And he said something that I will always remember and it's really stuck in my head, is that there's a difference between fine wine and great wine. And that fine wine has to have a soul. And, I think we were drinking a Rhone wine and he was like, taste this wine. You can feel that it has a soul, that the person who made it farmed that land. Now, they didn't have necessarily the most amazing international skills or, best, newest techniques, but this has heart and this has soul, and you can see it in the wine. And that stuck with me. That was just for him. I'm sure that was just some like offhanded comment.
That was his spiel that he gave all his interns, but you stuck onto it, and I think that's so perfect. What advice would you give, especially now that you're a mentor, what advice would you give to a younger generation of female leaders in the wine industry?
I think that it's the same advice I'd give to women or to men, is that you need to just jump in and do it and try and understand that this is a very long-lived business and product, right? We are part of the continuation of a story that started before us, and it's going to continue after we're gone. And so to do your best to listen and to observe as much as possible, and sort of get what you can from everyone. And then that'll make you a better leader when it's your time, a better winemaker or whatever else you're doing. But wine is this connection, right? I'm standing here, or I'm sitting here in this vineyard that was planted in 1990. And I'm doing everything I can right now to make these vines last another 30 years. For Napa, those are old vines now, but 30 years is nothing. So let's get to 50 years. So what can I do to make this last for another 30 years? I certainly won't be here to see that happen.
Well, let's see. Is there another woman you'd like to shout out who's making exciting wines that people should know about?
Wow, there's so many great wines and new wines out there right now. So of course, if you haven't tried Celia Welch's own label, Cora, you should. Incredible wines. And beautiful, just like her, beautiful and refined, and very thoughtful and soulful. And another wine that I collect myself, actually, and is fairly new, and I'm on the list, so I'm allowed to say it, so I'm not going to lose my allocation, is Delmas, which is a Syrah out of the Rocks District in Washington. And Brooke Robertson is the viticulturist, and she's doing some of the winemaking there. She's part of the family, and she was one of my interns years ago, and her and her whole family are incredible, and that is an area with such interesting terroir. So I think very highly of those wines.
And great that you call out a region that isn't necessarily on people's radar, that I think should definitely be more in the conversation as people look for more new, exciting, fine wines that certainly have that soul that you spoke of. So as we look past the jumble that is 2020 and 2021, do you have a vision of what's in store for the future of the wine world?
Well, I have hope for what I think should be the future of the wine world. Well, I think that what I'm seeing here in Napa is very exciting. And what I'm seeing is a return or a return to elegance and valuing structure and freshness. And Quintessa has always been about elegance and classic style. We are a wine estate, right? So we're just working with an estate. It is a diverse property. That's unusual in Napa. And then always having been about what this terroir can give, which is elegance. That wasn't that popular in Napa 10, 15 years ago. And now the pendulum is shifting back. And I am so happy about that, because these are wines that we're making now in this region that respect our terroir, our climate, and our aging.
Is there a wine from that perhaps previous, more elegant era of Napa Valley that you remember tasting when you were first getting into wine that inspired you in its own way?
I wish I have had more opportunity to taste the really old Napa wines. But the 1970, the most recent one recently, and the one that sticks in my head, is a 1977 Mount Veeder that was gifted to me. And just a beautiful wine. I mean, that structure, that strength, it must have been a monster on release. And to see how it's holding together. And, we've started a new decade release program. So we've re-released some library wines from Quintessa. And being the winemaker at Quintessa, I get the opportunity to taste some of the wines we don't have for sale. What impresses me so much about this region and these wines is that these at their 10-year, 15-year, they still have fruit. They still have freshness to give. And I think that combined with classic structure and balance and harmony, it's just what makes the wine age so well.
What are your plans for the year to come for you and for Quintessa as we get past COVID and into a new future?
Travel and eating in restaurants.
Fair.
Yeah, that is what I'm so excited about. It's really been wonderful to be able to be so grounded here for the last year. I haven't traveled in 12 months, but I am ready to go back out on the road and to share wine with people in person, to share a bottle, to taste wines, to go travel to other regions, and to eat food that other people have cooked. So I think that we will never ever take those kind of things for granted anymore.
100%. Is there a dream project that you'd like to pursue in the future?
Ooh, I feel like I'm living my dream here right now. Yeah, I think I'm living it.
That's good to hear.
I'm on a biodynamic estate. I'm talking to you. I'm looking at the sheep over here.
I can hear the birds. It sounds like you're having a great day. And Rebekah, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you today and hear a little bit about the woman behind Quintessa. And I can't thank you enough for sharing your time with us. And thank you for celebrating Women's History Month with Acker. So cheers. And thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy the 2020 season, and hope we can all get to Napa soon and you can leave. Have a good one.